Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I couldn't stop thinking about Valentin after watching the June 16 episode of General Hospital. The show wanted us to focus on Cullum, the cold fusion crisis, and all the danger surrounding Port Charles, but that wasn't what stood out to me. What caught my attention was something much more emotional. The entire episode felt like Valentin was quietly preparing himself for a goodbye. The more I watched, the more I became convinced that the writers were dropping a major clue about his future, and it wasn't a happy one. What really grabbed me was the way Valentin talked about his chances of avoiding prison. Carly wanted a straight answer, and he gave her one. He said his chances were about 1 in 1,000. Now, I've lived long enough to know that when someone talks like that, they're not expecting a miracle. They're facing reality. Valentin didn't sound like a man who believed he would somehow walk away free. He sounded like someone who had already accepted what was coming and was trying to make peace with it. That's why I found his conversation with Carly so powerful. On the surface, they were discussing how to stop Cullum and save lives. But underneath all that, I felt like Valentin was asking Carly for something much deeper. When he asked her to choose between Jocelyn's life and his freedom, it didn't feel like a hypothetical question. It felt like a man preparing her for a sacrifice he had already decided to make. The more I think about it, the more I believe Valentin sees prison as the most likely outcome if he succeeds. He knows what he's done. He knows the mistakes he's made. And for perhaps the first time in a long while, he seems willing to accept the consequences. There was something surprisingly noble about that. Soap characters often spend years running from accountability, but Valentin appears to be moving toward it. In a strange way, that could become his path to redemption. But the moment that hit me the hardest involved Charlotte. As a father, I couldn't ignore what that scene was really saying. Valentin wasn't asking for help. He wasn't trying to arrange an escape plan. He simply wanted Carly to bring Charlotte so he could see his daughter. That's the kind of request that carries a lot of emotional weight. Over the years, I've watched enough soap operas to recognize these signs. When a character starts arranging meaningful visits, reflecting on difficult choices, and making peace with painful outcomes, it usually means a major turning point is right around the corner. The writers may be telling us that Valentin's current chapter is coming to an end, at least as we know it. What makes this storyline so compelling is that it feels bigger than prison or punishment. It feels like Valentin is trying to leave something better behind. He may not be able to erase his past, but he can still make one final choice that protects the people he loves. Watching him prepare for that possibility gave this episode an emotional depth that stayed with me long after it ended. By the time the episode was over, I wasn't thinking about cold fusion or international spies anymore. I was thinking about Valentin. Every conversation, every decision, and every emotional moment seemed to point in the same direction. The show keeps hinting that he is preparing to give up his freedom for the greater good. Whether that leads to prison, redemption, or something even more dramatic remains to be seen. But one thing feels clear to me. Valentin is already saying goodbye to the life he once knew. Now, here's the part that keeps me from fully accepting what the show seems to be telling us. As emotional as Valentin's scenes were, and as many farewell signals as the writers placed throughout the episode, I still find myself asking one simple question. Is this really the end of the road for him? Or is General Hospital setting us up for something completely different? I've watched daytime television long enough to know that writers love playing with audience expectations. They'll spend an entire week convincing viewers that a character is doomed only to reveal a completely unexpected twist at the last second. That's one reason why I found this episode so fascinating. It wasn't subtle. In fact, it almost felt too obvious. Every emotional beat seemed designed to make us believe that Valentin's future is growing darker by the minute. The more I thought about it, the more I started wondering whether the writers were deliberately guiding our attention in one direction. They want us focused on the possibility of prison. They want us worried about sacrifice. They want us analyzing every conversation as if Valentin is preparing for his final chapter. But soap writers are masters of misdirection. Sometimes they place all the clues out in the open because they know viewers will become so focused on one outcome that they'll never see the real surprise coming. What makes Valentin's situation especially complicated is that he appears to have already accepted the possibility of losing everything. That's what separates him from many characters who find themselves in trouble. Usually, people spend their time searching for loopholes, making excuses, or trying to find a way out. Valentin doesn't seem to be doing that anymore. Instead, he appears to be moving forward with the understanding that saving Jocelyn and stopping Cullum may cost him his freedom. And honestly, I think that's why these scenes have been so effective. For the first time in a long while, Valentin doesn't feel like a man running from consequences. He feels like a man preparing to face them head on. Whether viewers love him or hate him, that's a significant change. There is a maturity and acceptance in his recent actions that wasn't always present before. At the same time, I can't ignore the possibility that Valentin's gamble could actually work. Right now, everything depends on Cullum and the information Valentin possesses. If he truly helps prevent a catastrophe on a global scale, the people in power may be forced to reconsider how they view him. In the world of international intelligence, usefulness often carries tremendous weight. History has shown that agencies are sometimes willing to overlook past mistakes when someone becomes essential to a larger mission. That's why I don't think a prison sentence is guaranteed, even if Valentin himself believes it is. Imagine the situation from the WSB's perspective. If Valentin delivers the key information that prevents disaster, would they really rush to lock him away forever? Or would they decide that someone with his knowledge, experience, and connections is simply too valuable to lose? That's the question that keeps coming back to me. Then again, this story may not be about legal consequences at all. It may be about redemption. I've always believed that the strongest redemption stories aren't the ones where a character suddenly becomes perfect. They're the ones where a character finally accepts responsibility for the damage they've caused and chooses to do the right thing, even when there's nothing to gain from it. That's exactly what I see happening with Valentin right now. For years, he has lived in the gray areas. He has made selfish decisions. He has manipulated people. He has broken trust. Yet lately, there seems to be a growing awareness that he wants to leave something better behind than the life he created. That doesn't erase his mistakes, but it does change how I view his journey. What really stands out is how often the episode returned to the subject of goodbyes. Not dramatic speeches, not shocking confrontations, just quiet emotional moments that carried far more weight than the action scenes. Those moments felt intentional. They felt like pieces of a larger puzzle the writers are slowly assembling. And let's be honest for a moment. Soap opera characters don't suddenly start resolving emotional issues unless something important is approaching. When a character begins making peace with loved ones, revisiting meaningful relationships, and preparing people for life without them, that's usually a sign that a major turning point is right around the corner. That doesn't necessarily mean death. It doesn't necessarily mean prison. It simply means change. In many ways, change can be just as powerful as either of those outcomes. Valentin could lose his freedom. He could disappear from Port Charles for a while. He could find himself forced into a completely different life. Or perhaps he could emerge from this crisis as a man who has finally earned a second chance. Right now, all of those possibilities remain on the table. As I watched the episode come to an end, I couldn't shake the feeling that the writers were carefully preparing viewers for something much bigger than the Cullum storyline itself. The mission may be the immediate crisis, but Valentin's emotional journey feels like the true heart of the story. Every conversation, every sacrifice, and every goodbye seems to be building toward a moment that could redefine his future. For now, I think the smartest thing viewers can do is pay close attention to every word Valentin says and every choice he makes. The show is practically begging us to notice these emotional clues. Whether they lead to imprisonment, a heroic sacrifice, a shocking escape, or a hard-earned redemption remains to be seen. One thing feels certain, though. Valentin is standing at a crossroads, and whichever path he takes next will change his life forever. That's why these recent episodes have felt so compelling to me. The dangers surrounding Cullum may be grabbing headlines inside the story, but the real drama is watching a man confront his past, wrestle with his future, and prepare for whatever consequences may be waiting on the other side. And if General Hospital has taught me anything over the years, it's that the most unforgettable moments often arrive when a character believes they have reached the end, only to discover that an entirely new chapter is about to begin.